And once again, we are here on Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Christy Lindor, management consultant and author. Christy, welcome to Living in the 21st Century.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you see, we have a lot here today to talk about pertaining to business and your job. What really motivate you in getting into such a task? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me on your show today. I really appreciate it. So again, my name is Christy Lindor, and I am a seasoned management consultant and author. And it was actually kind of funny how I got into consulting. Growing up, I grew up here right in Boston area.
Yes.
And I actually never heard of management consultants up until my junior year of college.
Okay.
So I walked into a team room. I had a marketing internship because my major in college was marketing.
Okay.
And I walked in on a group of consultants, and they were doing strategy work for that company I was interning for. And I was so fascinated by the way they worked together. They were there to really create a strategy for the organization. And I really was impressed by the way that they worked together. I was also impressed the fact that none of them lived in the location they were working. They were all flew in. So I was intrigued, and I spent the summer talking to them and getting to know them, and I knew by the end of my junior year that's what I wanted to do for my career.
Excellent. Seems like a visionary, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Well, so tell us a little bit about management consulting, what it really entails, and what's your target market right now, your audience, and so forth. Just educate us to what it's really all about.
Sure. So consulting is such a broad profession.
Yes.
But management consultants are specifically focused on helping managers. I mean, that's really kind of where the root comes from. It's really helping business managers, CEOs, organizations solve large, hairy, complex business problems.
Okay.
And it's a very broad kind of spectrum of different management consultants.
Yes.
Some focus on specific strategies for an organization, while others may focus on implementing or doing some of the project management. Others will help with kind of the post kind of operation to keep in it sustaining kind of day-to-day operations. Right. So I really focus in on kind of the management of people strategy.
Yes.
So anything that has to do with talent related types of issues, whether it's an organization that is merging and they're looking to merge and create a new org chart, or it is looking at the culture, if it's creating a new performance management.
Yes.
So anything in that space is kind of the realm that I focus in on.
Okay. Well, I recognize that there and then I can see that there's a whole lot of divisions in business that you can actually establish a consulting job on. So that seems like room there for many young college graduates. What would be your input on influencing college graduates that this is a specific area they can look to really elevate themselves in?
Right. So I actually think consulting is a prime, college graduates are a prime target for the consulting industry because as a consultant, you're able to move into different types of projects and client work, and it's a really fast-paced environment.
Okay.
And usually people say the axiom of consultants, 1 year in consulting usually equates to about a 1.5 to 2, almost 3 years of being out in an industry type of field. So for a college graduate, going into a consulting types of profession, you really get an opportunity to have all types of different experiences, be part of different types of complex teams and organizational types of problems, and you get to travel quite a bit. So it's really a great breeding ground to create, a really well-rounded professional to get a lot of experience in a short amount of time.
Okay. So tell me this: for the young college graduate who just graduated college, probably with the MBA or so forth, and there's a seasoned industry out there. There are many businesses that were operating for years. How can that person really gain that organization's trust that they are smart enough that they can show them a new diversion, a new direction in which they can operate their business, not having the practical years of experience, but based on what they would have learned at college, would that be sufficient, or what would they have to do to really influence that organization, that I'm the person that can really take your organization to a next level and so forth? What is your input on that?
It's an interesting question, and I say that because many consultants, especially early career consultants, that's an area that they struggle with, because in their mind they're saying, wow, I'm fresh out of school, how can I create and provide value to a seasoned executive? How can I do that? Couple ways and couple things that people can do. I think the first thing, and you just said it really nicely, Errol, is I think really being able to learn how to influence. Really, and by influencing, I mean really taking the time to listen, listening to your client, being willing to ask questions, and really looking to make sure that as you're really helping your clients, that it's not about you personally, it's really about what type of value can you bring to your client, and what type of innovation, what type of creativity and analysis that you can bring to your client. And it's over time where you're able to do research and build trust, with your client. That would be kind of the basics. But I would say definitely listening is key, and making sure that you have alignment in terms of expectations, and learning how to influence. And those skills, if you're confident with your, with kind of the basis of that element, and you understand the industry, you understand your client's organization, you're really able to build from there. So I think a lot of kind of the age and experience, I feel like that's just noise. I think at the crux of it, people want to be heard. They want to be empowered. And it can be any type of individual that can help do that.
Excellent. Okay. So let's look at some topics here. We wanted to talk about diversity and equitable inclusiveness. Would you care to elaborate on that and what you really mean by that?
Yeah. So with diversity, and it's interesting right now in the days and times that we're living in today, when you think about diversity, I think about back in the early 90s, there was a lot of programs and different types of initiatives really focused on how do we bring more different perspectives to a specific, whether it's a program or it's an organization. How do we bring more different worldviews to the table? And while that works, and for years, a lot of diversity programs really focused on just that. However, they, once that individual or those individuals get there, then what? How do you ensure that the other individuals as part of a team, for example, how do you ensure that they're including them? That there's a, and I think that's kind of where the inclusiveness piece comes from, because you can have, a diverse team or a diverse organization, but that doesn't always mean everyone's voice is heard, which is really what inclusiveness really means. And then, when you think about equity, I like to use the word access, having access to resources, mentorship, to the same compensation, same promotion opportunities.
From a diverse standpoint, do you see that in most organizations today that, culturally speaking, that the minorities of that organization, or sometimes in most cases blacks or Latinos, probably even Chinese in some cases, do they have the same input or opinion, voice? Are they seems to be taken from a different standpoint rather than hearing what they really have to offer? And even if they do they get the recognition for what they're saying as a minority?
That's a very interesting question, Errol, and I can speak from my personal experience. While today there's definitely a more heightened awareness out in the workforce, I think there's still a lot of work to do in this space. We've come a long way, but I think there's still a long way to go. And I say that meaning that, at least from my personal experience, it always feels as if we have to work a little bit harder to be recognized. I think one thing that I've done to really help me be successful in my workplace is being more open, asking questions,
right.
letting people know what it is I want to do, and making sure whatever I'm given, I do a really good job. I knock it out the park, 200%.
Yes.
And you know, to me, I know if I do really well, I earn the right to be able to ask for different things and to be able to seek out additional types of opportunities. So I think I feel like for minorities, while yes, there's still more work to do in that space.
Yes.
I think that all individuals can own their career and still take charge of it, irregardless of the culture they're at.
Right. So that's basically a consolation then to some minorities. They have to work hard, but guarantee when they do, you're getting the best. Right. Yep. So tell us some about transformational leadership and so forth in the organization. How does it, what does it really apply to, culturally speaking? What really is transformational leadership in any business-oriented organization?
Yeah. You know, 2018, I think is going to be the year of transformations for different organizations, if they haven't already. We're just in a very interesting time in history right now. There's a lot of disruption when you think about the onset of areas such as artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's things like blockchain that's coming around the corner that's going to impact every industry, every sector, every type of product or services type of organization. And so transformation, in a sense, it's really just the nice word of saying change. How do you know, as a leader, how do you really take your business to the next level in a way that you're able to still be able to deliver what your core business is, but you're able to do that in a way that's competitive today. If you think about some of the most disrupting organizations today, I think about Amazon, I think about Airbnb or Uber. They're doing things extremely different, and a lot of the old traditional business rules are changing. A lot of things are no longer applicable. And so as a transformational leader, you really have to be flexible. You have to stay 2-3 steps ahead of the market, and you have to do so in a way that's innovative and authentic to what's going to be best for your company. Okay,
pretty nice. One of the things that that I've learned through the grapevine over the past year, there was a drastic change in most business-oriented organizations, and not from the standpoint that they want to, but there are some of those that are so much, and I'm going a little bit political here.
Sure.
There are some of those that are so politically inclined to the present government, is that they are exercising a lot of biases within the organization, and those who management think that they were somewhat democratic, they are not being heard, they are not getting the same rights as those who are Republican, so to speak. Now, it may seem a little bit funny and seems a little bit strange, but it's really the reality that's going on here right now. These are things that we've heard through the grapevine. Would you say that the political atmosphere today has a serious impact on change or transformation in some organizations who are some way politically inclined to one party or the next?
I think absolutely there is some impact. It may be, depending on the sector or industry, it may be more impactful to others versus, more, when I think about like nonprofit organizations that they lean and most of their revenues come from grants, right? And grants are driven from the government.
Exactly.
So for them, they're definitely more impacted by those political type of dynamics, more so than a privately owned or a publicly traded company. But make no mistake, everyone's impacted by government, whether it's from a partisan perspective or if it's just from kind of the organizational perspective. And there's a lot of noise in the system. But I think from a change management, a leader really looking to take their company to the next level. They have to really focus on what are their core values, regardless of you put partisan ideas aside. What are their core values? How are they living that every day, and how are they bringing that to the market to their clients? And if they're doing so in a way that it's inclusive, I think that you'll be able to work and manage through the dynamics of the politics. But politics is here, right? Politics is life.
Okay. Well, that's true. That's true. Right. So tell us a little bit about transformation and reinvention. What that is measured to?
So I mentioned, I like to use the word reinvention because over the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of the different types of professions, positions, jobs that we know of today are going to become obsolete.
Yes.
And a lot of people may not realize that, especially as I mentioned earlier about artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's a lot of technologies that's coming that's going to replace some of the roles we know them today. So I think, any individual out there, if you know you've got another 10, 20 years in the workforce, I like the word reinvention because we're all going to be living this.
Yes.
And we're going to have to figure out how do we reinvent our brand? How do we reinvent our career in a way that we continue to grow and enjoy what we're doing in our careers, but also what's relevant?
Yes.
And being able to be flexible is going to be the key to those that succeed over the next, I'd say over the next couple decades.
Excellent. Now, I know that you have written a book. Could you tell us a little bit about this book, where it can be purchased from? Who are the agents out there carrying this book?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Sure. So my book is called The MECE Muse, 100 plus selected practices, unwritten rules, and habits of great consultants.
Okay.
And I wrote the book to really provide readers the real deal insights into corporate consulting.
Okay.
So in the book, I dive into my 16 years in the world of consulting.
Yes.
But I also, in addition to sharing my career story, I had a chance to connect with over 50 consulting partners and leaders. These are titans of our industry.
Right.
And they share their stories, their resources on how to be a great consultant.
Yes.
And very excited. It's my first book.
Okay.
And I'm in the publishing process. The book will be available on Amazon for pre-orders in January. And so for people that are interested in learning more about my book, I also have a podcast show. So they can go to www.christylindor.com or they can go to mecemuse.com, and that's MECE Muse.com. And Errol, a lot of people ask me, well, what does the word MECE mean?
Yes.
I get that because it is an acronym.
Right. Yes.
Because it's not a commonly known word.
Yes.
Well, it will be with the book coming out.
Sure.
But MECE stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive.
Okay.
And it's really it's an acronym we use in consulting as a way to make sure that we are solving the root cause of a problem and not solving the symptom.
Okay.
And it's really kind of a way of being. It's like a guiding principle.
Yes.
So we look at everything from a MECE perspective.
Okay, excellent. Well, I want to just dive off a little bit and look at marketing research. And there are a lot of businesses out there, and for some reason or the other, I'm going to basically speak about this a little bit, and then I want your opinion on this.
Sure.
So here's the thing. Many organizations over the years would have picked up on the North America Free Trade Act and export their businesses to companies like Indonesia and Mexico, China, and India, those places. And result of that, many people would have lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of jobs had went out the country. The president is saying that when he gives this tax cut, right, that it would enable companies to bring their businesses back to America. No, that's not actually true. Whether a tax cut was given before or not, I don't think it would have made a difference because these jobs were primarily shipped overseas because of cheap labor costs, which you're not going to get here in America. So it doesn't guarantee that when there's a tax cut that you're going to get people just automatically folding up their businesses and bring it back here. It doesn't make any sense. Neither does it profitable for them to do that. what is profitable for them is that they get this tax cut, it will yield their profitability one way or the other. They'll be paying out less. It doesn't mean they have to expand their businesses either because they get a tax cut. They can use that tax cut as some form of gravy, something to make it look good.
Sure.
It doesn't increase jobs, because if your supply is meeting your demand, there's no need for expansion if you're recovering a good amount of profit. So all that person would have been doing, or that company would be doing, is furthermore enriching themselves. And I believe the middle class eventually, because where there's a tax cut, somewhere around lurking, you will have a deficit. And there will be a deficit should this bill pass. Now, I know you didn't study this here out, so I'm not going to put you on the spot. But what is your opinion from this standpoint? Who would really benefit? Would it be the rich organizations, that 1% of wealthy people, or the middle class, and everybody would benefit as a whole? What do you think from that standpoint?
So, I've been following the tax plan and all the activity with it. It seems to be changing every day.
Yes. Okay.
And I know that it seems like we're getting close to the
Yes.
bill eventually being passed. So it's hard to say kind of where it's going to land.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of different kind of elements. So I've heard, just as you just said,
Right.
so nicely, I've heard people say it's going to really benefit the wealthy 1%. I've heard that it's going to be a short-term benefit for middle class. It should hopefully be a boost in the economy to help keep it going, because we're heading towards a recession. So
Yes.
I've heard kind of different elements to it. Couple things, if you think about it just from an individual perspective.
Yes.
So yes, any tax plan, regardless of who it specifically is targeting, it's going to impact us in
Yes.
some way. I think it's making sure that as an individual, we protect ourselves. And when you talked about the jobs that were sent overseas, it goes back to the point about reinvention.
Yes.
So even though there's some of these jobs that are going overseas,
Right.
a lot of them they're being commoditized anyway, meaning even if they stayed here, you may not have been getting kind of paid the way, to meet the quality of life here in the US. So it's probably time, for people that feel like, that, jobs are going away. I think it just opens up opportunity to go into new emerging markets. As I mentioned, there's a lot of new types of industries. There's the energy, solar that's coming out. There's, different types of things online.
Right.
There's a lot of social media influencers that are really taking over. So
Yes.
there's a lot of new markets that's coming into play. So I don't think it needs to be kind of, this is taken away and we've lost. I think it's really, if from a growth mindset perspective, I think it leaves you room to really, how do you reinvent and how do you create something
Yes.
that's meaningful here, irregardless of what takes place in Washington.
Right. So, very well said. What are some of your most challenges as a consultant out there when you have to meet with different organizations? And talking about meeting with many organizations, I've seen you were featured on several different medias and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in terms of, I guess, going back to your first question about the challenges of consulting, I would say the biggest challenge these days is really to make sure that you're coming with a solution
Yes.
that's going to meet the needs, and exceed
Yes.
the expectations of your client.
Okay.
Right now, like I mentioned, there's just so much happening in the world and
Yes.
convergence. And so how do you make sure that you're able to bring a solution fast enough, innovative enough, creative enough, and that's going to help push your client and empower them
Right.
to move forward. So I would think that's the biggest challenges at this time.
Okay.
It's just making sure to kind of stay ahead of the marketplace.
Right. Do you think the global marketplace had reached a stage of maturity where it become so competitive that hardly there's any really solutions that in probably being out there already that someone can utilize? Is it that mature, or there's still so much room for development and so forth? Which one is it?
Yeah, I'm an optimist.
Okay.
So I'm going to say
Yes.
that there's absolutely infinite opportunities out there.
Yes.
I think what we're seeing now is a lot of the industries and sectors we know on the global stage today, they're going away.
Yes.
And they're really being eaten up by the new economy. You know,
Okay.
I've heard that saying, and I think it's such a really great way to think about it. A lot of things are changing, and so, you know, how do you make sure that you stay again ahead of the curve, making sure that you know where your positions are. There's a lot of great resources out there that talk about workforce of the future, jobs of the future. How do you make sure you kind of stay a step ahead so you don't kind of get swept up as the old world is kind of eaten up? But I think that there's plenty of opportunity. I think this is the best time to be alive. Because of the access to resources. It's unparalleled right now.
Okay. So therefore then, you would say to those college graduates out there, there's definitely new emerging markets out there that they can fit themselves into, and success is in the future.
I would say fit themselves, but they can go out and create.
Okay.
This is the era of creation.
Okay.
So if there's something out there that you don't see, and you have an idea, go for it.
Okay.
Never in a time in history, you know, access to cheap labor, resources, the internet. There's just so much at your disposal. If it's not out there, go out and create it.
Okay. Well, Christy, we have come to the end of our program. It was really a pleasure having you here, speaking on as a management consultant on some issues and topics and so forth. Wish you all the prosperity in the future. And to all those who are at home watching, thank you once again for tuning in on Living in the 21st Century. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Imagine a time when no one person has brain disease. Imagine a time when no one person has Parkinson's disease. Or no one person has MS. No one person is debilitated by a stroke. And no family suffers the tragedy of Alzheimer's. Some of the best minds in America are doing more than imagining. The American Brain Foundation is seeking to find cures, where life without brain disease isn't just something we can imagine, it's something we can know. Help us get there.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.